Strategy and Snark presents Dungeons & Dragons Online. And welcome back! Today, we're revisiting the Devil's Gambit chain on Epic difficulty. This one, we're going to bounce around the city a little bit. I'm preemptively at what I think is considered the first quest. It doesn't really matter which order you do them. Anyway, in on Epic hard, I want to say there's 4... Is it 4 quests? 4 quests. So, first one here, we're going to be... What did they call this? I think they called it a hostel, but that doesn't... This is where the druids hang out in the city when they aren't in their little grove. It's been taken over by devils. Remember, if I'm skipping past some of the details of the quest, we've already actually done this quest. I do a little more detail in the heroic version of these. We're just kind of hanging out, seeing if there's any differences on the epic version. Off the top of my head, I don't think so. But, you know, I have been surprised before. Right off the bat, we've got Abishai. If nothing else, these guys should be a little easier than they were before. We have significantly higher defenses. We have our epic two-handed fighting feats, so we can cleave through them a little easier. Although I think the heroic... Actually, I have it right here. Heroic was level 14. So we were probably slamming pretty hard by the time we came through here. Considering how over-leveled we are most of the time, pretty sure that we just had to hit the cleave button, everything dies. This is a quest from the era of DDO where they just kind of put a million bad guys in every hallway. This way. Which I kind of get why. So it was a response to power creep, right? I don't think we've talked about this before, but there were a couple packs in a row, so a couple years in a row, where most of the content involved hallways that were just densely packed with monsters. Like, crazy number of monsters. I think the worst offender was probably slave lords. There was just so many. And part of the reason for this, it wasn't that the devs were getting lazy or that the devs wanted to kill everybody or nothing like that. The thing is, there was power creep with the players. And it was very much in vogue to be playing something like a sorcerer and just fireball the entire room. Like, this was kind of normal. It still is. But imagine I like to think of it in terms of paper Dungeons and Dragons. If your whole group is capable of throwing fireballs, the only way you're going to get a monster through is if you put one of the ways is if you put enough monsters in there that they survive that huge wave. Just the 6 fireballs flying through the door, something's got to survive, otherwise they're just going to fireball every door. And yes, you might be thinking, but wait, that doesn't make sense. Why? Like, fireballs are super effective against groups of bad guys, right? Here's the thing. To actually throw, say, Meteor Swarm costs spell points. If you only throw one bad guy in the room, on my wizard, I can just push my spell-like ability button that costs me 2 SP. Like, I don't care about single enemies, right? Small groups of enemies are deleted with single button presses. Now, I throw a fireball into a group, and only 75% of them die. Now I've got to wait on that spell to come back, and I went the wrong way. The point was to tax the resources before the players actually get to the boss. And it wasn't just spellcasters. A lot of fighters and stuff had the ability to just kind of chain through things too, especially when you what was it? The old epic system, Legendary Dreadnought Masters Blitz, that you could basically chain the entire dungeon without ever dropping your buffs. Oops. I missed. There was a lot of stuff going on. Player power was really, really high. So, they just put more monsters in the way in order to kind of chip away at the players a little more. What happened is they put so many monsters in the way that A, it became more efficient to ignore the monsters. You know, throw down a crowd control like a web or something and then just keep running. Because it got, especially on higher difficulties, it was just such a pain in the butt to just get through all of the bloated HP. It just took so long for every fight. It really felt grindy. Nobody wanted to do it. Problem 2, those packs are super unfun for the players that weren't overpowered yet. If you are on your way up in your levels, you're not an established player with a ton of existing gear and everything, and you walk into Slave Lords, like, that is a miserable place to be. I mean, just look at this guy. He's got 65,000 HP. Like, this is the problem with HP being the main reason that you have a boss. This happens in paper Dungeons and Dragons too. How exciting is it to have to stand in front of the guy for an extra 5 minutes because he has 1,000,000 HP? Maybe this is just coming off of, like, I've just been playing the new Zelda game, and without doing any spoilers, I have definite fondness for certain bosses over other ones. One of the bosses was just terrible because it combined the tankiness of Dungeons and Dragons, like overinflated HP, with a little puzzle you had to do. So and every time you wanted to hurt the guy, you had to do the puzzle. So I had to do that puzzle so many times because he had so much HP, and I guess I had gone there too early or something. I was under leveled for it. It felt a lot like a grind of a fight. You know, once you figured out the boss, that should be it. Once you figure out the trick to him, that should just be the end of it. Boss dead. So, second boss I fight. That's what happens. Same game. I figure out how to kill the boss, and now that I know the boss's weakness, bam, it's out. Not wasting any time. That was a fun boss fight. You know, at first you're doing no damage, and you figure it out. You're like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. Got it. No point in wasting time with, you know, now that you figured it out, do it 50 more times. Like, no. The other bosses that I fought so far, basically the same. I figured out how to I figured out their trick to them, right? And once you know their trick, you're like, ah, I've got this now. And they're easily taken down. Every one of them, just except that first one. That first one is just... And you can refight the bosses, okay? So I went back and I refought that boss. Still a pain, even with upgraded gear. Like, I know what I'm doing. It just still takes forever, and it sucks. I refought 2 of the other 3 bosses. Still good fights. The refights are actually a little watered down compared to the original one. They added HP, but like they took a gimmick or 2 away. Yep. Fun fights. I'd fight him again if I saw him again. Just, it's so weird that it's the same game, and like 3 out of the 4 bosses, great. Anyway, to tie this back into Dungeons and Dragons Online, there have been times where they've just added HP. Like, these Orthons aren't going to take very long, but you'll note that they take a few more hits than the Abishai, which is right, because the Abishai are weaker. They are lesser devils or something. I don't know. The point is, the Orthons are supposed to be tougher, right? So they take a few more hits. Perfectly reasonable. If I get a solid crit on an Abishai, it goes down in 1 hit. I crit an Orthon, half health maybe. But this doesn't feel wrong. Then you get to the boss, right? Which we're going to see in a moment, because this is a very short quest. So we're going to fight this boss, and it's going to be... He's going to be like a punching bag. Like, we're not really going to take any damage. And we're just going to be wailing on him. I can't see his HP, but like, look how little his HP bar moves. Even doing adrenaline into smite evil on an evil outsider. 5,000 damage a swing. But anyway, this is what I wanted to bring up. I think this is how you make a boss fight interesting without just giving them 12 bajillion HP. Just put damage gates in. I like damage gates. Like, yes, sometimes I get annoyed when the thing I have to go do sucks and I'd rather just punch the guy. I think there's a happy medium in here somewhere. But in general, I mean, how many bosses have we fought that involved me turning on auto attack and then just putting my hands in the air, right? It was, what, last episode? Episode before? We literally fought multiple bosses in a row that were just auto attack while I take a drink. Yes, this is just a wave fight. This is just fight some reinforcements before he drops his shield. But it still mixes up the boss fight without just making it a million HP. I guess you could consider all of the individual guys his own HP, but you could focus on the enemies that like are more dangerous, and everyone you kill is less damage coming in. He's actually going down at a reasonable rate, I will say. Like, he's not taking a century to go down like some of the giants. Man, giants take forever to fall down. Yoink. Mind's Eye. What was that? Oh, yeah. It has charisma. Use magic device +5. Eh. 2 down. So a boss I really like in Dungeons and Dragons Online. Let's see, just we got to pick positive stuff. I feel like I'm grouching too much on things lately. Like, yes, the channel is named Strategy and Snark, but that doesn't mean that I hate everything. Take me to the 12. We'll do the next quest. I mean, there's the dance party. But outside of gimmicks, let me think of a well done boss fight here. Three Barrel Cove, the airship quest, where you're fighting Captain Tew. Each of the sections that you fight him, there's no... So it's damage gated in that you have to fight him 3 times, if I remember right. However, there's nothing stopping you from just hitting him as hard as you can every time you see him. If you can one-shot him 3 times, you one-shot him 3 times, right? And they're not back-to-back. I think it's on the deck, in the cannon room, and in the engine room. You fight him 3 separate times. So he's in the quest for a longer amount of time than just, poof, I'm the boss. Oop, I'm dead. But he doesn't just put up a force field and stand there. Because, seriously, I have Dispel Magic and I'm Apparently we hit max level? It doesn't put our epic stuff on there. I'm level 29. Oh, I'm going to have to remember that. We need to go level up at the end of this chain. Like, I'm level 30. I've got Dispel Magic, right? I don't care about some, fighter's magic circle thing that he puts up. Like, I should be able to just Sparta kick that entire thing and roll him across the room like a soccer ball. Anyway, I like that boss fight with Captain 2 because it spreads his fight out a bit, but it doesn't stop you from dealing damage to him. It gets really frustrating when you have done the correct amount of damage to the boss, but the boss hangs out in the room anyway because you haven't also solved the puzzle. Oh, that's a lot of HP to tank through there. Because I can't crit an elemental. Boo. Anyway, there was a boss. Oh, who was it? It wasn't that long ago. We finished the quest and the boss kept attacking us because it hadn't despawned yet. But it was invulnerable. I like that Captain 2. If you go in and you greater ruin him in the face the second he spawns in, he will about face and leave. Similarly, when you're doing the whole cannons or the cannon bay thing and he's turning the cannons on and running away, you could just chase him and beat him down and completely ignore the cannons if you want. No defense gimmick here. There's quite a few bosses that are just put up a wall and fight some mooks, which, you know, I give it a little bit of shit, but I still like that better than auto attack the boss till it falls over. It lets them potentially put a little more spice on the boss fight because they know that there is a fight coming up, and they can put weaker enemies in the little reinforcement phase. So if you're playing smart, you can do your healing and your buffing in that phase. Like, just don't kill the last reinforcement. You could do some healing and buffing while you're kiting that last guy before you get into the fight. Here's another good boss fight. Did we get all 4 of those already? Another good boss fight. I like the Spinner of Shadows fight. Because you're not actually... I am totally walking the wrong way. You're not actually fighting her. You're trying to do some other thing while, like, running away from her. If I turn the right direction, this would go faster. All of this has just been a long way to say they put lots of enemies in these quests. There's actually a lot fewer than there used to be. If you never played the original versions of these and you're looking at this like, what are you talking about? This is the same number of guys you fight in every quest. No, it was easily 3 or 4 times the number of bad guys is what used to be in here. It has been toned down significantly. I remember just walking around a corner and a solid dozen Abishai just appear. And you walk 2 feet and there's another dozen. I forgot to flip the levers. So that's the problem with ranting, right? Is I'm not thinking about the quest I'm doing. There's a lever in here somewhere. There it is. Let's take a moment to appreciate all the set dressing in this quest. That's something that I think goes overlooked a lot when people are just zerging through. They go, hey, where's the boxes for my Vandal bonus? They don't stop and go, oh, this is actually a storage room. You know. Come on, get up there. I said up. Are you? Come on. Thank you. We should fall through. There we go. Got the crest. It's one of 2 crests we need. The other one's over here. There we go. That's a sneaky little puzzle, by the way. The DM text is going to kind of point you towards there being something there, right? But once you find one of them, how many of you turned around the second you found one of them and didn't expect them to put both in the same room? You get all the way down here, you kill these guys, and you're like, son of a bitch, where's the other crest? Just subverting expectations. So, to expand upon this problem in a way that people might relate with more these days, paper Dungeons and Dragons. Very commonly, you run into the problem of your player characters are basically Goku or Superman, depending on how old you are. And there's not really any fair way to put things in front of them. It happens to every group, right? Every group has this problem. The DM is trying to balance things without making it like obvious that they're just hitting them in the weak spot. It's hard. It's very hard to do balancing. I'm trying, like when I run my game, I'm trying to balance for between 4 and 8 people, right? Depending on who's playing. You're talking 4 to 8 people. We'll say 3 to 8. That's kind of the minimum and the maximum I've played with. I know exactly how many players I have. At the time, I know exactly how many players I have. I know what level all of them are. And I know all of their gear. And it's still hard to balance. I put too many monsters in. Combat turns into a slog. I don't put enough in. And it's just a speed bump. And why did I waste their time? It's so hard to hit that sweet spot. And now just, if you've ever played Paper Dungeons and Dragons, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know how often you have to, like, fudge the numbers on a monster because the monster was going to be, like, one shot on turn 1 and not get a single turn and nobody's going to care, right? Pretty sure there's at least one more lever. Now imagine doing that when you don't know how many players are going to be there. You don't know their levels. You don't know how hard they want the game to be. You don't know their equipment. You don't know how dedicated to the game they are, right? That's something that the devs have to take into consideration, especially when they're making a low-level pack. Take, I don't know, Catacombs, right? You don't really think about Catacombs, but the devs know Catacombs is so early in somebody's career. If the devs screw up Catacombs and make it, like, game-endingly unfun, Catacombs could be the reason somebody stops playing the game. If I make a mistake in my home game, somebody can come up to me later and be like, hey, that fight was stupid, right? Oh, hello. We have found a difference. We absolutely did not fight any of these Warforged Titans on Heroic. This was definitely not a thing. Wonder how many more of these are going to turn on. We'll just stick to the far end on the off chance that we avoid aggro. Ah! A lot of good that did me. Yeah, we did not fight these on Heroic. I was really not expecting it to be behind me. Clever girl. Anyway, if I make a mistake, somebody can just come to me and be like, hey, you made a mistake. We wanted to do this in that fight and you wouldn't let us. Or I think that monster was, you played it wrong or something. Whatever. We could talk about it, right? But how do people talk to video game devs, right? If you've ever been on the forum, it's like, I can't believe the devs want to talk to anybody the way that they get treated most of the time. Okay, we also did not have to fight one of these in this fight. So we are going to focus on beating this thing down, because I am assuming that if we beat the frog up, he's going to summon additional red slads like he did in Heroic. And I want this thing dead before we start seeing waves of additional reinforcements. He said something. Yep, there we go. Usually the bad guy saying something, like a text line usually indicates that he has moved to his next phase. Let's see. He should be getting close. There we go. He said something, and there's some slots behind him. Oh, he said something else. But I hadn't killed the first slots yet. Oh, we're lagging. We lagging. We're gonna, I don't know, turn on auto attack? Hey, we're back. And I think we might be able to take out the boss before that group of slads becomes a problem. They're red slads. We have 64 fire resistance. It's not exactly... we're not exactly weak to this boss. There we go. Do not touch the dimension door before you get your treasure. Smiting. They still make smiting? It is tempting to take. Smiting is like Vorpal for constructs. Unfortunately, they nerfed Vorpal, and in the process also nerfed Banishing and Smiting, to the point that I almost take them out of habit, but you really shouldn't. There's a cap on, like, how much you can Vorpal something. Vorpal being roll a natural 20 auto kill. They have to be under a certain amount of HP, and if I remember right, it's like 1,000, right? Big deal. And the last one is House Kenneth. Like, big deal. If I roll a natural 20, if it's under 1,000 HP, it instantly dies. Great. If I roll a natural 20, I just did 5,000 damage. Okay? We don't care. Vorpal. I remember when they didn't have limits on Vorpal. And you know what? I think they need to take the limits off. Not raise the limits. Just take the limits off. Why? For one thing, Vorpal takes up one of the slots on your weapon. You know, even a named item like the Barovian Greatsword still only has so many things that can be on it, and Vorpal takes up a slot. That's a slot that could have had a different stat on it, okay? Which is a cost because Vorpal doesn't work on bosses. And I'm fine with it not working on bosses. It's a video game thing, right? We don't actually want the boss to go down that fast. I do think we should put Vorpal back the way it was, though, because it really, really, really helps new players keep up with the experienced players. No matter how crappy your character build is, as long as you can hold a Vorpal sword, you can contribute, because you've got a 1 in 20 chance of killing that trash mob, and trash mob duty is what the new player in the raid or whatever, that's their job. I remember running Tower of Despair on my monk back in the day when the level cap was 20 and Tower of Despair was the hardest raid in the game. Or maybe not the hardest, but it's the one that had like the special rings. So like everybody wanted to do it to get their rings done. So it was a big deal. And I was allowed to go. I was not a top tier player. I barely had my gear together. Like I didn't have like raid gear level. But I was allowed to come. And you know why? I had 2 Vorpal commas. That was it. All they really need, like, once you have your main tank and your main healer, I think you need 2 tanks for Tower of Despair off the top of my head, but the point is, You only really need a handful of core people, and then everybody else is just gravy. So when you go up, you're like, hey, I would like to go. I have Vorpal commas. And they're like, sweet, you're on trash killing duty. Because no matter how bad you are, you still have a 5% chance of taking out the random trash mobs. Now, this is another character balance question, right? But look, even on hard mode by myself, is it taking me 20 swings to kill anything? No, it's not. My character is already stronger than Vorpal would give me. I'm killing things faster than I would with a Vorpal sword, even at original Vorpal power level. Like, tell me what the downside is. I'm perfectly happy with less powerful characters, or even the wizard, okay? What's the problem with letting the wizard carry a Vorpal dagger or something on the off chance he needs to stab the goblin in front of him enough times to kill it? Who cares? A, it's a wizard. He could cast Finger of Death if he wanted to. It'd be way more efficient, right? So what's the problem? B, like, maybe that wizard doesn't... Maybe that wizard knows, like, hey, I need to save my SP for the boss fight, or I'm really just here to buff people. But now he can feel like he's contributing to the fight without having to spend resources. I know this is part of why they added spell-like abilities, so the wizard can always spam his little 2-mana spell is all it really takes. And it'll do way more. We're talking thousands and thousands of damage, right? Where's the downside in just putting Vorpal back on the off chance somebody wants to be a Vorpal sword guy? The wizard has access to Meteor Swarm. Are you really going to tell me that Meteor Swarming a room full of guys is worse than a Vorpal sword? You can put the Vorpal way earlier. I think they've changed when they can drop. But I used to see like level 2 Vorpal weapons. Like, I think they were just Vorpal. They might not have even had a plus at the time. But it's still, like, that's pretty cool. Again, you have to roll a natural 20, okay? Hey, you want to make generic fighter better? Let them Vorpal on a 19, because they are supposed to be the weapon masters. Let their 19s count as 20s. Let them Vorpal twice as often. You know what's going to affect? Nothing. It'll be cool for one person who plays it, okay? If you really, really want to get picky, I guess people in Reaper 10, maybe you don't want people going into Reaper 10 and just like, all right, team, everybody scratch him with your dual-wielding Vorpal daggers until he falls over. Okay? 2 things. Okay? You want to get mad at people one-shotting things in Reaper? Guess what? You don't play Reaper until you can one-shot everything anyway. 2, it adds accessibility. Am I going to play Reaper 10? No. But if I wanted to join a group and be like, hey, I'm nowhere near geared for this, but I have a Vorpal sword and I can tickle the guys in the back until they fall over, maybe that would be enough, right? Just like the old Tower of Despair. Maybe all it would take is like, hey, you know, at least 1 out of 20 swings, that guy's going to kill something. Maybe that might be enough to get me in the door with all these other titans who can actually fight these things without needing to rely on Vorpal, right? Let Vorpal be the crutch that lets you play up to getting the gear to not need Vorpal anymore. Right? It's like gameplay evolution. I'm using this gear because I don't have that gear. The more of that gear I get, the less of this gear I need, and then eventually I move on to a sword with more unique abilities that helps my character more. Because again, Vorpal doesn't work on the boss, and I'm fine with that. So when I take my crappy character into the Reaper 10 or whatever, and I'm tickling the trash mobs, I'm just there to make life easier for the guys who are going to have to do the actual legwork in the boss fight. That's what it comes down to. I'm not going to meaningfully contribute to that boss fight. And I believe that the Reapers... Do Reapers count as undead? Or do they count as outsiders? Let's find out. DDO. Famine Reaper. I just need one. Evil outsider. Okay. I was gonna say, if they're undead, then they can't really be Vorpaled anyway most of the time. But they're evil outsiders. At least the Famine Reaper is. Well, I didn't mean to do that. Where are we? I guess I'll wait for the thing to go out. Oop. But yeah, I honestly don't think it would break anything if they just let Vorpal go back to the way it used to be. It'd be cool. People would happily play with it for a while. And then most likely stick it back on the shelf because it's not as good as regular weapons. You're giving up a slot on your weapon, and it's not optimal. I mean, let me know if you think I'm crazy. You know, would it break the game in half if people could run around with Vorpal weapons? I mean, I used to do it, right? I used to do it. I did not like it as much as just killing the enemies with damage. Okay? Hitting for basically 0 damage because I was a hand wraps build monk. Using the commas only because you needed a bladed weapon. What's it gonna hurt? And we've got, let's see, what other Vorpal effects do we have in the game? Now that I'm thinking about it, there is the Monk Epic Feat Vorpal Strikes. So yeah, Monk would actually be able to kill stuff without... Alright. I'm not gonna crap on Monk. Monk got kind of inadvertently nerfed a couple times. Accidentally, not so accidentally. But does it really hurt anything if 5% of a monk's attacks auto-kill when it's punching? Honestly, the monks might turn it off. Because they want to punch things longer to get more ki. I don't think it would hurt anything. Just auto Vorpal on monk's attack. Because it's still a feat, okay? It's still an epic feat. An epic feat to be able to punch heads off, okay? Tell me that that's not Dungeons and Dragons, right? Tell me that punching heads off is bad for the game. I forget which one I think I want this. I want this thing lit up. Doop 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 doop. Oh, I can't turn that one. Oops. Guess we have to go this way. Up. Over, down. There we go. No trap. Just shiny. I don't care about XP. No point in killing the Juggernaut. I will take these remnants, though. Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of a reason that they can't just put Vorpal back the way it was. A couple people try to sneak their way through higher Reaper than they should. So what? People just... You're giving people more options on how they play your game. I could maybe see you say make orange name, like the mini bosses, immune to Vorpal. But at the same time, it's been a long time since like fighters were encouraged to have different weapons on them. Like, how awesome would it be if you carry your Vorpal Greatsword to use on orange bosses, you use your Club of Disruption to take out undead. Right, if you put all of the, like, let's say, Heavy Mace of Smiting to break constructs. Especially if you limit which weapon type, like slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. Limit which one gets which abilities. I mean, ship has probably sailed on that idea, but I still like the idea of it. Maybe ranged ones are what takes... there was one more. What was it? Smiting, Disruption. Did I say Banishing yet? Maybe Banishing is the piercing one? Maybe Banishing should be the slashing one? Because you're like cutting the cord that keeps them here? I don't know. I think that was all 4 quests already. What are we at? Yeah, we're about at the time for 4 quests, considering one of them was very short. Double check my list. Check. Check. Check, check. Well, there we go. So what was the verdict here? There was a change. You remember what it was? We fought some Warforged Titans in one of the quests. I was not expecting that. It's a very small change, but a welcome change. You know, I like those little changes from heroic to epic. I like that. Right? Dev's just putting a little spice on the epic ones. But we are also going to level up. Oh, do we get a feat? Kind of hope we don't get a feat. Damn it, we get a feat. Not only do we get a feat, but I feel like I could screw this up easy. Because we get 2 feats. So we're going to level up at the very beginning of next episode. So that I can go and consult my character planner. Because it is not here like it usually is. So, next time we'll level up. And next time, where are we going? Ah! You may have noticed we've been basically doing these in level order. Give or take that the free quests are kind of all over the place. There's one pack in particular. If we go push this button here, there's a pack that we kind of skipped over, and it should be a big obvious sore spot down here in our low level epics. Not the chronoscope. Oh, except we did them in heroic. But yeah, there's the White Plume Mountain and Other Tales. This pack is all over the goddamn place, level-wise. So, we're going to do it next. So, that's the plan. Level up, White Plume Mountain. See if there's anything new there. Thank you for being here. I really am curious if anybody can tell me what would break if we just put Vorpal back the way it was. Just no HP limit. Just you rolled a 20, thing is dead. I want to finish my thought before I sign off here. I know there's a handful of named weapons that have Vorpal stapled on, just as a flavor bonus, that doesn't actually do anything. I don't think any of them would suddenly catapult themselves to being indispensable. Black Razor has a version of Vorpal that I don't think follows the rules of Vorpal anyway. If we're really, really lucky, we'll find out next episode. Man, that would be fucking baller if Black Razor drops. Oh, man. That'd be awesome. Unlikely, but awesome. I think the biggest challenge to putting Vorpal back the way it would actually be Manslayer, would be my guess. I think Manslayer is actually what the devs would complain the most about, because there are a couple of items in the game that are not weapons, that you just wear them and that gives all of your attacks Manslayer, which is Vorpal but only for humanoids. Right? It has to be the obvious human shape, and then you can auto Vorpal. Well, you can Vorpal with any weapon. That would be my guess, is that it would be too easy for people to have Manslayer, which works on enough things that I think that they would say no. Because they don't want it to be too easy to just, alright, everybody has to have Vorpal slotted in. Because at 1 out of 20 swings, you kill the monster and you move on that little bit faster. It would probably be optimal to wear an item with Manslayer. Not a Manslayer weapon, like a necklace of I think there's a ring. I think it's a ring that gives you Manslayer. What would be awesome is that the Alabaster Lioness and the Onyx Panther both have Manslayer. I think the Raptor has it too. But anyway, cool stuff. Cool stuff. Let me know what you think. You know, that could be my one contribution to DDO, is I got Vorpal turned back to the way it was, so that all 3 people who care can use it. You know where I would use it? Giant Hold. When you're fighting those stupid giants that take for like a year and a half to fall down. Vorpal is just a type of weapon that is super effective against a certain subset of enemies. It's no different than disruption or banishing or any of those, all of which should also have their limits taken off. Otherwise, why even carry the weapons, right? Enemy HP is so inflated. They do not work in epics. Okay? Maybe limit the CR instead of, like, maybe just have it check the CR of the monster instead of the HP. So then your level 2 Vorpal weapon only works up to CR 5, right? I could see that. A lesser Vorpal sword isn't going to work against a level 32 monster. What do you think of that? Did we solve Vorpal? I really got to go look up what we're getting when we level up. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.